Because can you believe this? Scottish primary kids, schools, are being encouraged to ask pupils as young as 4 if they're gay, lesbian or trans. Did you know what a trans person was when you were 4? Or a lesbian?
Never heard, wouldn't have known when I was 10 either. And I think this comes hot on the heels of the Cass report.
Yeah.
And Dr. Hilary Cass warned about young people and gender issues. And she said we have to exercise caution when talking to young people about gender issues because they're very susceptible.
Of course they are.
And here we are. Here we have Scotland, which seems obsessed by gender issues, I might add, asking kids as young as 4. It's crazy.
And this is all coming through a charity called LGBTQ Scotland. And just if you are in Scotland, watching or listening, of course, you'll be pleased to know, I'm sure, that your hard-earned taxes go to fund this organisation. £1 million. And so the charity says that head teachers should install gender-neutral toilets to mark Transgender Day of Remembrance.
Do you know, it's interesting,
for 4-year-olds.
The gender-neutral toilets. There was a big story in Scotland last year where teenage girls would not use the trans toilets because boys were coming in and taking the mickey out of them when they were on their periods, going into their sanitary bins, messing around. So girls were not going to the toilet at school during the day because of this. And, you know, most parents would say they want to have separate toilets for the kids. Why can't you just have one toilet for transgender people?
And of course, all this was a big factor in the demise of Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, of course.
Because of the trans... And also, don't forget, Scotland has brought in that new hate crime law, which has already had about 12, or is it 15, or is it 20,000 now? People have complained already.
Well, and especially about Homo stuff, isn't it?
The first one. Now, has the world gone mad? Let's talk to the co-director of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith, and GB News senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Susan...
Morning.
Good morning to you both. Susan, to you first. Carol and I are not easily shocked, but this, frankly, is shocking. These kids are far too young to be exposed to this sort of claptrap.
Well, frankly, LGBT Scotland should be nowhere near any schools. But the fact that they're in primary schools is especially shocking. They are not even... This is not even in their remit. So when they go out and look for funds, they are looking for, their stated aim is to deal with children in the age range of 13 to 25, so children and young adults. But they don't even claim to have any expertise in primary schools. And yet here they are trying to extend their reach, going into primary schools, grabbing them while they're young, much like the Jesuits used to, and trying to indoctrinate them with this new secular religion.
And Susan, the Scottish Government have already been warned about the promotion of ideology in the classroom, and yet they're choosing to ignore that. What can be done about that? Anything?
Well, I think parents need to get in contact with their schools, especially if they see that they're going for an LGBT youth charter scheme, and demand to know what they're doing and demand answers. We have information on our website about the toilet issue. Because we have an opinion from a leading KC that says that this is not legal. This is contributing to the harassment of girls, as you said, in schools, and this should not be happening.
It's funny because I was just talking to peers before the show started that it is illegal to actually do this under the Equality Act. So they're breaking the law as well. You know, it's frightening, isn't it? Because young children are very susceptible, and there's a lot of peer pressure around the trans issue. So a child who may or may not be trans or gay or lesbian may feel they have to become one of those things to fit in.
Yes, and all these schools under the LGBT Scotland scheme have these clubs, these rainbow clubs, and it's obviously even more appealing to young children, terribly glittery, terribly exciting, come and be allies, come and express yourself. And so they're going along to fight for a sense of belonging, and then they're coming out with these brand new identities. And of course, as we know now, Cass has said that this social transitioning is not a neutral act. So they are getting ever younger children to do this. In defiance of Cass, the Scottish Government is busy ignoring the findings of the Cass review. Now they're allowing this from one of their own organisations, because the Scottish Government, as you say, fund this organisation. And, there's going to be a generation of children, frankly, at some point, who are going to need redress. And is that going to come from the government or LGBTQ?
Susan, thanks. Let's bring Nigel Nelson into the conversation. Nigel, do you think this is a reasonable way to approach 4-year-old children?
Yes, provided that the initiative is age appropriate. So obviously it depends how it works. Now, if we're talking about words like indoctrination or encouraging them to be gay or trans, that would be wrong. The idea of actually normalizing sexuality from a young age, I would have thought is a positive thing. Because bear in mind, an awful lot of children nowadays will have 2 dads or 2 mums, so they're experiencing all this at home. So no harm then in making it a normal part of growing up at school.
But Nigel, how can you ask a 4-year-old to articulate whether they are gay, straight, or transgender? How on earth can you do that?
Well, I don't think you can.
But this is what they're going to do. But this is what they're going to do, Nigel.
Are they? Are they
yes,
actually
they are.
turning
Yes.
to 4-year-olds and saying to them, "Are you gay? Are you lesbian? Are you trans?"
And they're going to have an LGBT champion aged about 7 or 8 by their shoulder.
But that's my point about normalizing things. The idea of an LGBT champion, again, seems to me fine. It's a question of making the whole thing normal. But what would be wrong would be to encourage it, to indoctrinate. Those are things that should not happen. But until we actually see how this initiative is actually working, we have to go from there. And I think Susan's right, that parents ought to have a hand in this and make sure that what is happening to their children is appropriate for that age group.
But Nigel, last week Hilary Cass said clearly in her report that social transitioning, which is what this is all about, could change the trajectory of a child's sexuality. They may feel that they should be doing it because their schoolmates are, because it's exciting, because it's new. So that is social transitioning of an ideology. It's crazy.
Well, hang on, but that's suggesting that children are being encouraged then to be being gay or trans or whatever. What I'm saying is that would be wrong. You don't encourage children to do that. What you're doing is you're normalising the whole thing. You talk about having gender-neutral lavatories in schools. Now, provided they are proper unisex lavatories, self-contained cubicles with their own washing and drying facilities, that would be...
Nigel, they haven't worked in some. They haven't worked in some.
Well, let's get Susan back in that. What is the point of gender-neutral loos for 4, 5 and 6-year-olds?
I would say probably for younger children they do have gender-neutral loos, so to be fair. But after the age of about 8 or 9, they have to be separate. And one thing I would say about LGBT Youth Scotland is we know what they are saying to secondary school pupils. And we have got on our website a transcript of training that they delivered at a secondary school in Scotland, and it is appalling. It's encouraging teachers to transition children behind their backs. Yeah. It's talking about children
behind
killing
the backs
them.
of parents.
Not telling them, yeah.
Do you mean Susan? Do you mean behind the backs of parents?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. And it's saying that children will kill themselves if they're not allowed to, with a jaunty picture of a noose. So we know that the training they're delivering to secondary schools is not appropriate and it's not legal. So that is my big concern. I don't think what they will be doing in primary schools will be any more appropriate because they are not delivering appropriate education to secondary schools as it is. But yes, the toilet issue, as I say, we have an opinion from a Casey about what has been happening in the schools in Scotland where that has been put in. They are not proper gender-neutral loos with their own drying facilities. Right. They actually have a communal corridor in the middle with washing.
All right. Well, let's give Nigel the last word here because we're under pressure time. Nigel, just very briefly, do you still think it's appropriate to be having LGBT clubs and societies and organisations for children as young as 4, 5 and 6?
Yes, provided you make sure it is age appropriate for that group. Well, we
But
don't
it
know
isn't.
that, do we? No, hang on. We don't know, Andrew. We don't actually know that. We don't know exactly how teachers are doing this, and that's my point.
Teach them to read and write, Nigel. Teach them to read and write and do their arithmetic, the 3 R's. Stop all this psycho-babble.
Well. Yeah, I'd do that as well. That children are there to be educated, but normalising
Not
sexuality.
indoctrinated, though. That's the difference.
I'm sorry, Karen, I missed that.
Not indoctrinated. Educated, yes. Indoctrinated, no.
Absolutely right. Indoctrination would be wrong. Encouragement would be wrong. Explaining would be right.
All right, look, always good to talk to you both. That's Susan Smith, who's co-director for Women's Scotland, and Nigel
Nelson.
Nigel Nelson. I was going to call you.
You've known
I was
for 25
going to call him
years.
Nigel Evans, the Deputy
Yes.
Speaker. Nigel Nelson, who is, of course, Senior Political Commentator here for LBC. A Scottish Government spokesman released this statement. We're committed to doing everything we can to make Scotland the best place to grow up for LGBTQ plus young people.
I think you messed that up. This includes funding LGBT Youth Scotland to deliver a range of projects, such as the LGBT Charter programme.
LGBT Scotland are yet to comment on this story themselves.